We are Quadre, the voice of Four Horns, and um, maybe, I don't know, Daniel, do you want us all to introduce ourselves, or did you want to introduce us?
Yeah, I can take it away.
Okay.
Thanks, Lydia. Yeah, so uh, before we go too far, I think, yeah, just getting everyone acquainted with who we are is the first thing, first and foremost. And I want to say we are just honored to be here to speak to you. This is something that we feel really passionately about, and we've kind of shifted our entire focus here. So to have a conversation with all of you about this is really, really wonderful. So my name is Daniel Wood. I founded the group back in 1998. So that's who I am. And then how about each of my colleagues will just kind of introduce themselves.
My name is Lydia Van Driel. I'm the horn professor at University of Oregon, and I joined Quadra in 2007. And I'll pass it over to Amy Jo, who was the next person to join.
Hi, I'm Amy Jo Ryan. I play third horn with the Los Angeles Philharmonic, and I joined Quadra in 2000 and when did I start? I'm not even sure.
2008.
2008. Okay.
Hi, I'm Adam Unsworth. I teach horn at University of Michigan, and I'm the newest member. I just started this year, first season, and am enjoying it so far. Great to be here.
Yeah, and we're absolutely thrilled to have Adam join. Our longtime member Nathan Pollock just retired after 18 years with the ensemble. He retired from the horn and also from Quadre, so we wish him well in the next chapter of his life. If while you're looking at me, you look at this one eye and you're like, wow, it looks really red. It's because I've been gardening all morning and a branch just went and slapped me right in the eye. And so I'm going to be kind of blinking a lot during this presentation. So just letting you know that. Now, if you know about us and you've seen us before, we're really happy to see you again. I saw in the chat that one of you remembers seeing us play a joint recital with Genghis Barbie back at the 2000, I think it was the 2011 San Francisco Horn Symposium. So we got a chance to meet a lot of you then. But we've been doing concerts around the country, as I said, since 1998, and a lot of those things that we've done are encapsulated in a really lovely summary that the Northwest Horn Symposium put together, which you can find in the packet. So you want to find out more about us, go there, and of course you can always go to our website. There is one thing I would like to call out on that summary, bio about us, that I think is really important, kind of critical to this whole discussion we're going to have today. And that is in 2020, so just last year, in the midst of this pandemic, we received the Hart Prize from the Ariel Avant organization. And that was in recognition rather of our artistic programming tied to social justice issues. Now, we're absolutely flattered and humbled to receive such an award. We were up against a lot of chamber ensembles who are doing fantastic work out there. And one of the reasons why we are especially proud of that is because it has come to define all of our artistic decisions moving forward. And this really wasn't by accident. We've been engaged in doing programming that's tied to socially informed art since our beginnings, but we made a very conscious decision back in 2019 to shift our work so that the issues that we are passionate about in our communities, that is what drives what we do. So in the next 40 minutes or so, we're going to be delving into that in a big way. First, we're going to talk about how we made this pivot as an ensemble, as a group. Second, we're going to talk a little bit about what has worked and also what hasn't, because there have been a lot of bumps along the way, of course. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about what we're going to do next. So lion's share of our program is going to be talking about all the steps we've taken leading up to our programming in June, but we, of course, have projects and plans beyond that. As you might imagine, doing some kind of reset when you've been at this for 20 some odd years is tricky. Like I said, we've always had this be a part of what we do, but never like everything. It hasn't like been the foundation for what we do. So we realized if we're going to make some major shift like that, we needed to define it a little bit more clearly. So I'm going to hand the mic over to Lydia here to just discuss about how we did define this project, what we called it, and how that kind of helped us be able to communicate with all of our stakeholders.
Thanks, Daniel. So, yeah, being in Quadre for as long as I have been, and then, of course, Daniel was the founder of the group over 20 years ago. We've always engaged in sort of meaningful community outreach. It's just part of what we do. Anytime we did a performance week, we would invariably perform at a soup kitchen or at a assisted living facility, something like that. And we did that because we care about doing those kinds of performances as well. But we also did it because oftentimes when you're trying to get granting money from a community, they will, give you money if you also do something like that. So our motivations were multifold, but definitely our interest in doing that is very genuine. However, in 2019, Quadre, with the previous incarnation with Nathan, we all played a week in San Francisco and culminating in a really great performance at the San Francisco Conservatory, where we were playing on a performance of the music of David Garner. And we had a great time, and we had played a house concert that week. And after our week of performances was over, it kind of felt like we had just come to sort of a, double bar. Like we had done a lot of really great things. We're all, friends with each other, and we all have moved in our lives into situations where we're very busy with our careers, with our families. I don't know how many of you know that Daniel has triplets, which I can't even imagine how he functions. But anyway, we're all sort of thinking, all right, this has been a really fun run, and maybe it's time to move on. But then we had one of Daniel's students' parents was at the house concert, and she was really excited about our group. And she also happened to be a specialist in marketing, like a really amazing person who had worked in major corporations in marketing. And she contacted Daniel and was like, you guys, you just need a better website. And, what you do is so important and you should keep doing it. And so Daniel contacted us all and we kind of had a conversation and thought, well, maybe we do still have something to give. And we got together and had this deep heart to heart. And we were like, well, why are we really doing this? What's the purpose? And it all boiled down to this common denominator that we wanted to do something that was meaningful in helping our communities, building, just stronger bonds and helping out all the good things that happen in communities. So that's kind of what happened. We decided in May of 2019, it's not the 19th century anymore, right? In May of 2019 that we were going to, continue with our work and really rebrand it as music with a message. And every year we were going to think of, one specific thing to focus on. So this year we've been really doing a lot of work with the unhoused population. And I'm not going to reveal what our next year's thing is because I think Daniel's going to tell you all about that later. But anyway, it was really fun to kind of just, have this moment of a pause and reconsidering like what the point is of what we're doing, and then to kind of as a group make our decision and move forward with it. And of course, Nathan also was kind of grappling with whether he wanted to keep playing the horn or not. And we were all sad to see him go, but we're also so happy that Adam joined on and is, 100% in with this idea of music that can actually affect a community in a positive way.
Thank you so much, Lydia. It's impossible for me to have summarized it any better than that. That was fantastic. And I think this is a good time for us to acknowledge even more so like the amazing efforts of Elizabeth Chung, who's on the call actually, because without her, our group would not have been able to see what we could do. We couldn't have seen what possibilities would have existed. So if everyone could just do a nice little round of applause for her, she really is a kind of an incredible individual that helped make this, really a reality. So, okay, we have this idea, music with a message. We have this fantastic person behind us who knows a ton about marketing and about messaging and the like, who's helping us kind of craft this new idea. And as you can imagine, when you get started with something like this, and this is true whether you're an ensemble just getting out of the gate or you're an ensemble like us who had 20 years of experience, you have to now let everybody know about this. I'm not going to get into all the weeds about what we did in order to make that happen, but that means you have to get, your board, or at least your closest allies, aware of who you are and what you're doing now. You have to, whoever funds you. I mean, we're a nonprofit organization, so we receive grants and the like, but even if you're not in that situation, you want to be able to make sure the people that support you in whatever way they do, whether it's monetarily or with resources or just time and effort, that they're completely on board and aware of what you're doing as well. We had to let our staff know, we had to make sure we let our collaborators know, and then most importantly, we had to start letting our audience know. And that got kind of went out in segments. Like first we focused on the overall project, music with a message. We created videos around that concept, and then we started getting a little more narrow over time. Okay, so that's how we made the pivot. Okay, so let's talk about number 2, which is how we worked to lead up to these concerts in June, focusing on the unhoused community. So step 1, tell everyone about it, make sure you got something to say. And then step 2, you have to create it, which seems like the easy one, but it's not. And especially when you're trying to create something that's based on kind of community issues. It's one thing to put a concert together that's all works of Mozart. It's quite another thing to suddenly have to put together a concert where you're now trying to tie it all together with homelessness. It's harder to maybe draw the connections. So we're going to talk about what we did and the kind of the process we did. One of the first things I would recommend all of you do, find someone else who's doing it. So I'd like to turn the mic over here to Amy Jo, because early on in our process, we realized we needed to seek out allies. We needed to find other people that were greatly invested in this kind of work as well, and ask them, what are they doing and how are they making it happen?
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. Yeah, as we were discussing having a rebranding or a rebirth of our organization, changing our focus and our values to be more community minded, we each individually thought of people in our own communities who inspired us, who were doing things like Daniel said, what we were setting out to do. And a person that I knew from work was Vijay Gupta, who was the founder of Street Symphony, which is an organization here in Los Angeles that serves up to 10,000 people in our community, oftentimes people who have been recently out of prison, have been in stages of poverty or homelessness, just people who wouldn't have normal access to a concert stage and an artistic experience like we would normally offer to an audience. So I reached out to him, and he was a wonderful source for us and has given us a lot of support as a mentor, and gave us some good guidance on how we could get started with our group, and then we grew from there. As well as some other organizations that I've been a part of in the past, where we've reached out to schools and communities, again, in underserved, populated, underprivileged communities where we could, they were already making a difference. So for instance, I played in a chamber orchestra called Iris for 13 years prior to my position here with the Philharmonic. And they had a collaborative connection with an academy called Stax Academy that is probably similar to the thing that the Philharmonic does with the Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles, where there's students who can receive lessons and involvement in artistic and orchestral and theory and arts classes. And so we kind of use these as our guide. We also reached out to other mentors, for instance, Kane Ritas. I'm going to say his last name wrong because I'm good friends with his wife, who's a horn player. Many of you may know Christy Crago, and I always say Kane's last name incorrectly. Can someone help me?
Yeah, Kane Thomason Rudu.
Thank you. Who was instrumentally involved in the Sphinx organization for quite a while, and so because he was in the management with them, and now he's with management at Detroit Symphony. He's currently on our advisory board and has been a wealth of information for us and ideas on how to implement things in their community and how to reach out and make these collaborative connections with homeless shelters and food, the soup kitchens, the food kitchens, which is something that we've always done. So. Is there anyone else I'm forgetting?
Oh, well, yes. We have probably asked the advice of, I will conservatively say, like 40 people. And those are some of the people that Amy Jo knows intimately down in Los Angeles and around the country. But it seemed like every one of us had a pool of people that we were asking and we were connecting with. And even those people, we would then ask them for more advice. So yes, absolutely. Yeah. I'm going to go on to the what I think is the most important part if you are interested in engaging in socially informed art, and is connection. It is all about connection. It is all about connection with you and with that particular issue. If you are to do a concert about the unhoused community, you need to connect with the unhoused community. Doing it in a bubble where you're just talking about it and talking about the quote, as we heard many times when we were starting this journey, the homeless problem, it's not genuine, it's not authentic, it's not real. But it was interesting because I think a lot of us came from that perspective of this kind of homeless problem. We thought, okay, well, we can do some good as an ensemble because of that. And I would say that's the first mistake we probably made, which is we kind of got wrapped up in that concept, and especially in talking to a few other people and the like. And it wasn't until actually we're out there and engaged in it in this different mindset when things started to make a little more sense. One of the ways that things started to kind of coalesce and make this much better for us was when we started connecting with the composers that were going to write the music for this new programming. As I say, these new issues inform everything. So this year, it's all about the unhoused community. Okay, so if we're going to do that, what works are we going to play for that program? And we decided, as part of another new initiative of ours, that we are going to, be commissioning exclusively people of color or underrepresented composers moving forward. That we needed to find people that had some connections with the unhoused community. So through Vijay Gupta, indirectly, we were then directed to a composer named Nina Shekhar down Los Angeles. She had worked with the Street Symphony down there, and we started conversations with her back in May 2020. And we started a conversation with her and a artistic process with her. And in fact, if you want to learn more about the artistic process, we're going to be doing a conversation with Nina and the co-collaborator, which I'll introduce in just a moment, this coming Saturday at the San Francisco Conservatory. So if you want more details for that, just go to our website, quadre.org, and click on tour, and you'll find the link there. So in any event, so we are going to connect with music. And so we had to find the people that were inspired by this cause, by this issue. Like that was their driving reason for wanting to create the art. It wasn't because of just any another commission, if you will. And so we decided we were going to approach the music from two perspectives. One, that is to commission composers such as Nina who have a background in it. And two, through a composition contest, thereby opening this topic up to many, many people. We didn't realize how we were structuring this until we already had the composition contest for last year. So our contest last year did not have this focus. It was just a contest. This year it does. So if you are interested in writing a work for us, that's on June 1st, we'll have our deadline for next year's contest. I'll explain that a little bit more in just a moment. But I want to give you guys a preview, a really fantastic preview right now of these brand new works that are written for June. Now, Quadre hasn't even been able to get together yet to perform these, but I'm going to show you some quick snippets here, just so you can kind of get a taste for it. So first, let me just show you the co-commission who has written this work. So let me share a photo of them. So what you see there is Ben Shirley and Nina Shekhar. Now the two of them are the co-collaborators in this work. And the reason why is when we first approached Nina, she felt she wasn't completely qualified for this. She had never been homeless. She had never been part of the unhoused community. She felt like she needed to have some connection there. And so originally she approached Ben, who does have connections. I'll explain that in a moment. And Ben created some work that, some tracks, if you will, that were incorporated into her piece. But then after a time, Nina felt like that wasn't genuine, that wasn't authentic. So after, I think it was in early 2021, January, she approached me and said, would it be possible if we can change this commission to now include Ben Shirley and make both of us equal in this project? I will write 5 minutes, he will write 5 minutes, and we will both write works that are a basically reflection of the other person. You see, Ben was homeless for 2 years in Los Angeles. He was a very successful rock musician, got unfortunately addicted to, I believe it was alcohol and drugs, found his way to Skid Row and was there for 26 months. Since then, he has been sober, clean and sober for 9 years. He actually was and has risen to huge heights, writing music for musicians of the LA Phil and the New York Phil. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Fast and Furious series, but the Hobbs and Shaw film, he was one of the orchestrators for that. So he's doing great now, but he has this experience, and this was experience that Nina knew. And the two of them had a 6-hour conversation talking about identity, being very, very open with one another. And through that conversation, they were able to create this work that we're going to be premiering in June. Okay, so that tells you a little bit about them. I want to show you just a little bit of the works so you get a taste for that. So for Nina, she wrote a work called Recovery Swap. both of these works are for four horns and electronics. The electronics, for the most part, are conversations, the recorded conversations that the two of them had over those 6 hours, where they talked a great deal about identity and many other things. And as you can see, the tape includes the words that are said. Who am I? Is having an identity crisis. I'm Indian American. Here comes the homeless composer. So this kind of conversation between the two of them with their own separate identities. And then we have a lot of extended techniques that we're doing throughout the entire piece. I'd show you more, but I don't want to give things away for what we're going to be doing down the line. So, but what I will do is I will play a short snippet of the opening of Ben's movement. So you just saw a little bit of Nina's movement. Now let's see a little bit of Ben's movement.
Nina Shekhar, how do you respond to that?
The pronunciation of our name, such a big thing. You know, I say my name as Shekhar. Even though our identities are like very different in ways, I feel like there's like these interesting bridges. Interesting bridges. I didn't know you were from Germany.
Born in Berlin, lived there till I was 6. That's about right now.
Okay. That was a quick taste of that. So you will hear more before long, we promise. So we needed to create new work that kind of embodied these ideas. And through Nina and through Ben, we got to understand what it meant to be unhoused. As Ben so eloquently put in one of our conversations with him, it's you have to understand the identity of the individual. A lot of people think that the way to solve the problem is to take someone who's homeless off the street and put them into a house. But that they're just because they're an outside person, putting them inside doesn't work. It's just you've put the outside inside now, and it leads to self-destruction most of the time. And so Ben said, it has to be conversations. You have to talk. You have to see whether that individual's ready, or if they even decide they want to, and try to get to understand again their identity. So that was really eye-opening for us because we hadn't thought about the issue from that perspective. As I said, we also did a composition contest last year, which wasn't focused on this, but you know, as luck would have it, one of the composer who won, Michael Calkin, he wrote a work called By Hook or By Crook, which does have some ties to those who have very little trying to get something from people who have quite a lot. So that work is something that we've also been working on. And there was another work that also won, Zachary McDonald. And I'm going to very, very briefly share the flyer. And this is just for any composers that happen to be out there in the audience. Our contest is running right now. And it's due June 1st, and we would love to see as many people apply for this as possible. Our season for next year, the title is called Nature Calls for Harmony, so you'll learn a little bit more about that in a few minutes. But just to give you a heads up on this. Okay.
I put the link in the chat also. That takes you to the website for information on the composition contest for anyone interested.
Thank you very much, Lydia. Okay, I would like to turn this over to Adam because while creation of the music was vital and very, very important for this upcoming program, and these 4 works are fantastic and wonderful, it was also equally important for us to make a connection with the organizations in our community. The main focus with Music with a Message is for us to create concerts that develop empathy, that talk about hope and humanity, and heart in particular with this Unhoused program. And so we needed to make strong partnerships with local organizations. So Adam's going to talk a little bit about the experiences from when we got together in October.
Thanks, Daniel.
I have some photos too, Adam, by the way, if you want me to put some up.
Sure. My first experience with Quadre was this past October, going out to Mountain View, and part of it was just to get to know them better and to have an experience rehearsing and just seeing how we meshed as an ensemble. And in the midst of a pandemic, concerts were a little challenging to come by, but we were able to get a couple of performances that went along with this theme of serving the unhoused, and is in the San Jose area. So we were out in California, and Daniel lives in Mountain View. I'm staying nearby, and we were able to spend a day out in 2 different places in San Jose. One was called the Bill Wilson Center, a homeless shelter, and that was our first performance of the day. And we tried to give them a variety of repertoire. Some of a little bit of the new pieces. Amy Jo played some natural horn. We had some a little bit of improvisation that I did, and then some alphorn as well. Daniel led there we go. There's a good picture of that. Daniel led some of the patrons there and the staff in a clapping rhythm game to get them involved, and we just tried to make as much of a connection with them as possible. The staff was there out in force and were really, really appreciative. And it seemed like the patrons there were also quite interested in what we were doing and just happy to have a performance and something that was something different for their day and for their experience there. But anytime, as you see in that picture, they were able to speak with them, just to touch base and see how they liked the concert, what they felt about the sounds of our instruments and the different instruments. Lots of interesting questions come up all the time when we play for people who this might be brand new for them. So that was a fun experience. It was an interesting one. You kind of have to roll with it because right above the Bill Wilson Center is a highway. So it was acoustically a different experience for us, certainly. But I think that's the kind of thing that in a lot of ways they just appreciate, because you're out in their place, right? Rather than expecting them to come to you, you go out there and you serve them in their community, in their area, in their actual residence, and that means a lot to them. And I think you could feel that. The next place we went, it was a place called Martha's Kitchen, and it was across town. And we really didn't know what we were in for there. Didn't know how the setup was going to be and exactly what they even wanted. This is a food pantry where people come and line up and wait for food for dinner. And we were going to basically be entertaining them during that dinner hour, mostly while they were going to be waiting in line to pick up their food for the evening. And this was kind of a cool experience. We got there, we were waiting around to really figure out where we were going to set up. We had a couple of different options, and we chose to set up right in the parking lot. We had to even ask people to move their cars so we could get a good place where we could be viewed. There was a gentleman named Dan that we met there who usually plays guitar, like I think 3-4 nights a week. He would come to the homeless shelter or this food pantry and play guitar. There's Dan right there. And Dan was instantly friendly and was super excited that we were there and started asking us what tunes we knew. One thing that Dan always does when he's there is try to get the patrons to come and participate with him. Any tunes that they might know that he knows, and to get them involved just makes that connection. So you can see us out in the parking lot playing, and Dan's playing guitar. And we have one of the patrons here. Daniel, can you remind me of his name? You're muted.
I think it was Richard, wasn't it?
Richard. All right. Richard was actually pretty rocking with My Girl. And we may have even done an encore of My Girl after that first performance. He came back and we did it again. And we didn't have a chart. We were basically just, what key are we in, and trying to make up some lines that would work. But you could tell like the power that had. Basically, us being there, entertaining. People were walking by and watching us while they were stood in line, and sometimes coming over and saying something. But as soon as they saw us with sort of their people, the people that they knew, there was really a powerful connection there, and we got a lot of nice comments and people coming over just very, very appreciative for us being there. So that kind of gratification, we just don't often get that in the concert hall, and it's gratification that goes both ways, and that connection felt really special that day. I'll turn it.
Thanks very much, Adam. Because we are all in different communities, I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, Amy Jo's down in Los Angeles, Lydia's up in Eugene, Oregon, Adam's over in Michigan. Often we get, how the heck do you make that work? That must be a huge inconvenience. That must not help you at all. And actually, we discovered, especially when we made this pivot, that was actually a very positive thing, because it meant that each of us as soloists in our own communities could go and start working with different organizations in the communities. And we had every intention actually of doing that a lot this year. And then there's this thing that called the pandemic that showed up. So that didn't happen like we expected it to. But we know that every time we're not meeting together to perform and to do the work that we're doing, that we each in our own areas can continue that work in the organizations there. So it's a powerful thing for us to be doing. And it also is very important that when you start this kind of work, when you start engaging these community partners, that you continue to do it. Drive-by outreach, as it's been called in the past, is not the name of the game. We're really trying to seek out meaningful, deep engagement, and that comes from going time and time and time again. I don't actually want to dismiss drive-by outreach or outreach at all, because we've done a great deal of it, and I've seen the power of us doing one concert in one place, one time, how that can have such a huge effect on people. But I know to be deeply engaged with the people, and especially around a particular issue, it helps so much if you actually can spend more time there.
Can I just add something on top of that, Daniel? And something that we discussed when we were first making this transition to more social causes is how could for basically white people who grew up with privilege, we all grew up in homes where we weren't going hungry. We always felt safe. We always felt loved. How could we relate and make a difference? And like Ben was saying, you don't take someone who's homeless and put them in a home. That doesn't change, but more that we had to educate ourselves and continue to make these connections and just reach out to people. And like Daniel was just saying, just to keep going there and have these conversations that aren't always comfortable.
Right on the money. I couldn't agree more. I want us to talk just very, very briefly, just for a minute, about some of the other partners we've brought on, because we want it to be a multi-layered experience when patrons come to our concerts in June. So as part of that concert, these are some of the, let me just show you what our, this is the theme logo for the concert, just so you can see that, which kind of encapsulates the topic and the conversation we're going to be having that night. So over the course of that program, there are going to be, you're going to hear those pieces. We're going to be collaborating with a gentleman named Kristopher Grant, who's going to be putting visual media up behind us over the course of it. And that visual work is part of his own design. He's taken over 1,000 pictures he's found of people that are unhoused and on Instagram, and then utilize that to create images and impressions up on the screen, which is incredibly powerful. But he also is using images that we have collaborated with a local artist elective. So the group is called Allied Artists West, and their 20 painters painted work about the unhoused community and some of the very hopeful and uplifting things that are happening by local nonprofit community organizations around that. So these are just a few of those paintings for me to share for you all. And each one of these paintings also has a poem that's been associated with, that's been created for that particular painting by another group. Let me bring up another one for you. How about this one? This is Karen Marquez did this one, who actually is organizing the entire thing. And this is, we have a local organization called the Community Services Agency that provides food. They also provide, if you can see in the background where my cursor is, showers and places for people to clean up. They provide services to those young mothers that are forced to flee kind of hostile situations from homes. So they've been a wonderful organization, and we are collaborating with organizations such as those to have them come and speak at the program as well. So in between the pieces that we are performing, we're going to have actual people from those organizations talking. Some of them will be administrators, people in charge of those programs. Some of them will be clients, those part of the unhoused community taking advantage of those services. And we hope that it's going to create an environment where it develops empathy. It's going to create an environment that just encourages conversation and connection, again, with the issue and with, you know, what's happening in our community. At this point, I just want to briefly talk about three. So even though we're doing all this work and we're going to continue doing it going into the next year, we'll continue our connections with the community partners that we've made in the unhoused community. We are starting now to reach out to all the organizations in our local area, in the San Francisco Bay Area, along with our local areas where we all live, to find those that are interested in having a discussion with us around the environment. As you saw earlier, our composition contest is specifically around that now. So if you're interested around, we're going to have 2 winning works for that. That'll become part of our series next year. Elizabeth Chung was responsible for that last logo you saw, the home and hope, humanity, and heart. And she's also responsible for our new logo, which is in process here, but you're getting a sneak peek at what it will look like for next year. So nature calling for harmony. And we are collaborating with, I think many of you will know this name, Jeff Scott. He's the horn professor at Oberlin and longtime player with the Amani Winds. Will be writing a work for us. And one of the things we really benefit from in our ensemble is also having Adam and myself be active composers. So we write works as well for these programs. So that kind of encapsulates where we are with all of this, and we're still learning, and would love to hear from you all.
We have a question in the chat. Amanda wants to know, what would you say was the biggest hurdle we had to overcome during this process?
Well, I can speak to that first, and I would love to hear what my colleagues have to say as well. I think for us, it was convincing a lot of people, especially our board, that this was viable. This made sense. It made sense for us to create music that was based on causes within our community. And it's still a little untested, to be honest. I'm pretty confident it's going to work just fine, but I think they're like, well, why don't you just, one of them, for instance, said, well, why don't you just be like, you know, I remember I grew up on the Canadian brass. Why don't you just do like fun, silly things and balance that with doing like very virtuosic things on stage? And I told them, well, you know, we've done that, and that was fun, especially when we were younger. But we are now at a point in our lives where this really, really matters to us, and we kind of put a stake in the ground, and this is what we're going to do.
I'm just gonna say this is probably stating the obvious, but the pandemic was a huge hurdle. We had initially the week that we ended up doing in October was scheduled for September, and that had to be pushed back because of pandemic issues and many other things. And then again, we had these upcoming concerts that are now going to be happening in June were initially scheduled for March in California, and the pandemic was still raging at that point, so we had to cancel all of that. And hopefully, everything that we are now planning will actually happen in June. I'm very excited about it. But yeah, pandemic, it's been hard.
And if you have other questions, we'd love to hear them in the Q&A, or thoughts for that matter. You just have thoughts about the whole thing. While some of you are typing busily at this point, we'll also kind of look at the chat and see if there's anything there as well. I do want to say that one hurdle that we still face, and I think this is unique to every single one of us, is we're French horn players and we're a French horn quartet. And I say French horn a lot, I must admit, and I'm sure some of you are perhaps maybe a little annoyed with me just to say that rather than to say that we're a horn quartet. But I find so many times I say I'm a horn quartet and they're like, you're a saxophone group? So what do your trumpet? I mean, it seems like I'm forever having to explain who we are. And so that is part of it too, is to say, okay, we're a horn quartet that is focusing on community causes, and we're getting like this double head take, like what are you? And then some of it is also just convincing folks of what we do. I mean, even with, as I say, gosh, now it's 23 years under our belt. We're still getting out there and just kind of showing that, yes, this is a very, very viable medium. And there still aren't that many professional horn quartets in the world. So for that reason, I think we still have to explain ourselves. And so we have to explain what we do and then how we're doing it. So there's just a lot of layers that have to forever be articulated, which makes things challenging.
Thanks to all of you for your comments in the chat. It's nice to hear from so many folks. Thank you for coming to this presentation. I know that we have the young artists, emerging artists recital is coming real soon. So I think maybe John is going to come back in and take over. So thanks, everyone.